Hello and welcome to my unboxing and review of the Dartzone Magnum, the 40 round pistol blaster that just came out from Dartzone. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. So let's take a quick look at the packaging of the Magnum. It calls it the Super Drum Blaster, which I guess is true, because it has the 40 round turret. Claims ranges of up to 80 feet, and it appears to be something of the covert ops line. I'm not sure if that's similar to Nerf, where they do the Doomlands and other various lines blasters. This appears to be part of the covert ops line. It says that it has slam fire, which is good, an adjustable stock, and then it also appears you can easily, add and remove the drum via this pin up here, which is kind of cool because I know with a lot of Nerf blasters, once you insert the pieces together, they tend to, stay together, whereas this one, it appears you can remove the turret for loading. It appears I was incorrect when I was unboxing it, as you cannot remove the turret in the stock form once you attach it in, which isn't really a big problem. I think it should be a relatively easy mod to make it removable once again, either with magnets or if you have some kind of threaded, either like a bolt or something, you could probably replace this piece. But basically in its stock form, you lift the turret up into position, you slide the pin through, and it'll clip into this section of the shell. Like I said, it should be easy to make it moddable, or make it removable when you mod it. However, in the stock form it does stay in, which isn't really a huge issue. The Magnum darts are about 1 millimeter shorter, that difference being in the tip specifically. The foam is cut about the same length, and it will fire the Elite darts. I'll go over that more in a second though. The tip of the Magnum dart is fairly rigid, the only really compressible part being this very tip of the dart. Where it does have a slight bit of compression, however overall it's very rigid dart. Okay, so going over the externals of the blaster from front to back, we have a fairly standard orange tip. There's no attachment point or rails, just because as far as I know, Dartzone doesn't make any attachments, so it wouldn't make sense for them to put attachment points on this blaster. Iron sight up top, it's very simple. There's 2 in the back, 1 at the front. Supposedly it would help you aim, however with a 40 dart capacity slam fire blaster, I don't see myself doing much aiming. Going back to the turret itself, it does hold, like I said, 40 darts, clips into place, and then you can't remove it, like I said. However, it should be easy to mod that into a removable turret if you so desire. Going back a bit further, Dartzone sticker, and then there's this cool plate here that says Magnum, where it's like raised lettering, and I think that that's pretty neat, and if I painted that, it should look pretty cool. The slide is fairly comfortable, and when you pull back, and then you have to push it forward, which is one thing that I don't like. However, it leaves this little bar out, which can potentially be an issue. However, I don't see it being too much of an issue myself. And then at the very back, we have this sort of armrest thing. It's a little weird in my opinion. I thought it would be a stock, however, it only folds up, I guess, for storage maybe. But you can adjust it to 4 or 5 different points along the rail, and it'll lock into place. And it's basically to sort of support your arm while slam firing. I'll go over this a bit more in a second, however, it's a bit strange in my opinion. Okay, just to focus on this sort of arm support piece for a minute, just because it's unique to this blaster. It folds up, which I guess is for storage, but other than that, I don't see it being particularly useful. In the default state, it does pivot, which is also mildly annoying because in my opinion, I would like it to be firmly mounted, and then just because when you're moving around, it sort of wants to rotate out from under your arm, which I find mildly annoying. And then, like I mentioned before, it is adjustable to about 5 or 6 different positions. However, it's not particularly comfortable either, in my opinion. I guess it's supposed to be like this and support your arm when you're slam firing. It's a little hard to show on camera because my arm would be in this default position. However, if you're moving the blaster around, it just kind of flops out from under your arm, and overall isn't particularly practical in my opinion. To load the drum, you simply take one of the darts provided, and then it's a bit of a twist fit, which is kind of good for springers, but you just go along and load it up, and it does rotate fairly smoothly as well. It makes a bit of a clicking noise, but it does feel very nice, as opposed to something like the Roto Fury, where it has that, it almost sounds like you're breaking it when you rotate the drum. This has a very smooth rotation. As I mentioned before, the Elite Dart is just a millimeter or so longer than the Magnum Dart. However, it does feed and fire. However, the clearance might be a small issue that I've run into, as there's really not a lot of room. It's kind of hard to catch on camera, but there's very little room between the dart and this part of the blaster. Now, that's not an issue if the dart's pushed in all the way. However, if you are running and it sort of comes out a bit, you will jam the blaster. I don't see this being a huge problem, though, at least with newer darts, because it is a fairly snug fit in the barrel. However, that might be something to consider when using slightly more worn-out darts or like a community dart pen. So to operate the blaster, it's extremely simple. You just pull back on the slide after loading the turret, as I had mentioned before, and then you just fire. Now, a thing that's interesting about this particular blaster is it does rotate the turret on the prime, which is really nice because it gives it a very clean trigger pull, as opposed to something like the Maverick, which had the turret rotate as you pulled the trigger, which led to a little bit of a sloppier trigger pull in my opinion. So this is very crisp. Holy cow, that was only like half the darts. That's pretty sweet. One quick side note, when I was slam firing, I did miss this one dart. So far, the only practical use I found for the arm brace, besides its intended purpose, is that it holds up the blaster while filming. So I guess that's a bonus for reviewers out there. The pros of this blaster would be the high ammo capacity, the ability to sort of reload as you go with almost all of the turrets being exposed, and the stock performance is actually really good. I took out a dart real quick, but there's actually no air restrictor, as you can hear. But basically that lets you shoot fairly hard in stock form. Sort of a double-edged sword, because you could injure the blaster after dry firing an extremely large amount of times, especially if it's modified with like a heavier spring. However, it is padded on the plunger head. I meant to film that before I put the turret on, thinking I could take the turret off, but you can't do that apparently in the stock form. So take my word for it, as you just heard, there's, at least this one didn't have an air restrictor. I'd assume the other ones are like that as well. Additional pros, I think the grip is actually pretty comfortable. I would say medium-sized hands, but it's not the best grip I've ever felt, but it's certainly not like, an old school Busby grip where you have two fingers hanging off the blaster. And then also the price point for this particular blaster is fantastic at $20 US at my local Target. I think that this is totally worth that in terms of price. I also do have a few cons with this blaster. The weird arm mount thing is a no-go for me. I'm going to take it off when I mod it, but it just sort of gets in the way, in my opinion. Like, it's a good idea, I guess. I would have preferred to stock. But this sort of arm brace, if it didn't rotate, like, I feel like it wouldn't try to work its way around my arm and just sort of rotate around it. That's sort of a negative. Another one that I found is when you're gripping the blaster, you kind of want to grip it like this with this foregrip area, as it's probably meant for. However, your arm hits into the turret, so you really can't grip it as you would want to. You either have to go with an awkwardly wide sort of angle grip, which is uncomfortable in my opinion. So I think I'll just stick to, the one hand on the grip, one hand on the priming. So those are sort of the objective pros and cons, with the exception of, obviously, in my opinion, with the price. Like I mentioned before, this is $20 US where I found it in Target. And for my opinion, this blaster is totally worth the $20. What other blaster can you get that has a 40 dart capacity for $20? Like, that's kind of crazy. It also has really good stock performance. Like I mentioned, I don't have a chronograph, but claims up to 80 feet, and I would be inclined to almost believe that. It's hitting the wall really hard in my basement. Like I said, I'll go outside and do a full-on range test tomorrow, but it's probably getting elite, if not about the same performance as, like, the Sentinel, where it's like slightly above elite. I would put this in sort of that category, and it has a ton of darts. You can reload it easily on the fly. The rotation's really smooth, and overall it's just a great performing blaster. So that wraps up my review of the Dartzone Magnum. I totally recommend this blaster. I look forward to using it at HVZ or Rochester Foam Dart League event in the near future. I will be having a mod guide hopefully soon, as I want to do the stock performance test tomorrow, and then probably right after that I'll tear it apart and film a mod guide for you guys. So look forward to those two videos soon, as well as some other things like my stride bolts nearing completion and some other 3D printed stuff in the near future. I hope this blaster has helped you in some... I hope this video has been informative to you and helped you in your purchasing decision. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.